Okay, so a dominant wants to go to the tonic. A secondary dominant wants to go to the target chord. Now, that could be C major, C minor, it could even be C dominant, it could be C pretty much anything, although you wouldn't usually go to a C diminished chord in this fashion. So the seventh chord of a major scale, of a major key, is a diminished chord, half diminished if you're talking about seventh chords, which we are. You wouldn't usually go to that with a secondary dominant because the half diminished chord is even more dissonant. It has even more tension than the secondary dominant. So generally you wouldn't do that. But to every other chord, you can go there using a secondary dominant. Now secondary dominants are pretty important, but we can replace them for other constructions. And I'm going to teach you about one right now. G, B, D, F. Now we know the B is a semitone, a half tone away from C. So I want to go up to C. G just wants to stay there, and F wants to go down to E. Just a semitone, a half tone. D doesn't really have something to do right now. It's not all that important. We could leave it out and it will work just fine. But in this case, for this construction, we're not going to leave it out. We're going to change it. We're going to alter it in order to increase the amount of tension to go back to C even stronger. So we turn it into D flat, because D flat is just a semitone removed from C. And now it's pulling on C a lot more than it used to. Okay, so what do we have? Well, first of all, to avoid any confusion, let's add words until we need them. Second of all, we've got 1, 3, a diminished fifth, and a minor 7. So now it's G7 with a flat 5. Okay? And we're going to C major at the moment. Okay. There's something very interesting, quirky about this chord. What happens if we, just for a second, imagine D flat to be the 1? Now, calculate it for yourself. Calculate what each interval would be, and then we'll get back. So pause the video, I'm going to give the answers. F would clearly be a major third. G would be a fourth, but it would be an augmented fourth. In the key of D flat, you would have a G flat, but now it's an augmented fourth. It's not G flat, it's higher up than G flat, it's G. So not a fourth, but raised to an augmented fourth. This one is a bit odd. If you called it an augmented sixth, I can't blame you, but we don't do that generally, because when you play these notes together, and D flat is your bass note, B is just going to sound like C flat, meaning it's a minor 7. That's what it sounds like. We can call it B all we want, but that's not going to change and it sounds like C flat. So what do we get? This is a major third and a minor 7, making a dominant chord. But now we don't have a fifth. We're just going to take that for a second. And we have an augmented fourth. So that's D flat 7 with an augmented fourth. We're just going to call it 4 for now. And those chords have the same note content. Not the same bass note, so it's not entirely equal, it's not the exact same, because with a G7 we're playing a G in the bass, with D flat 7 we're playing D flat on the bass. But they have the same note content, and every note wants to resolve in a similar way towards C. So what do we call this replacement of a secondary dominant? Because that's what it is, we're replacing G7 for D flat 7. Well, the distance from G to D flat is called a tritone. This is a tritone. This already was a tritone, so now we got 2 tritones, right? We got even more tension than we used to. But with D flat as our bass, we moved our root up a tritone. So we substituted our secondary dominant for a chord a tritone away. which is why it's called the tritone substitution. You can substitute any secondary dominant for a dominant a tritone away. And in practice, you really don't need to use these extensions. They sound great. That sharp 4 or sharp 11, we'll get to that, on a tritone substitution sounds amazing, but you don't have to do it. And it's not like everyone always does that. Sometimes they just play perfect fifth. You know, we've just gotten used to these kinds of sounds and we've expanded upon them even more. But this is how the tritone substitution works. So, let's come up with an assignment. Okay, so what I'm asking you to do here is take the tonic, put it down, calculate what the tritone substitution would be for the 2 chord, or what that would be. Then the tritone sub for the 5 chord, what that would be. And then we're going to replace the regular dominant as well for its tritone substitution, moving back to the 1. And we're going to do this, well, again, first in the key of C, then in the key of E flat, and then in the key of A. So, good luck, and we'll get back to the answers next lesson.